Welcome to a Thursday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, and in studio, Ashley Nicole Moss, who today, a little bit different attire for Ashley. Yesterday, she had on her finest Celtics gear.
Did we get
And
the poll
Ashley,
results back?
I'm glad that you brought that up
Uh-oh.
because, yes, we
Uh-oh.
did. We have the poll results for Ashley.
That's
And
crazy.
didn't come out great for Ashley here. 75% to 25% think that you're a Celtics fan now, Ash.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, let me defend myself for 20 seconds. First of all,
Okay.
if you see the Celtics image, it's a gradient image of like 4 different shades of green. I just so happen to be aligned with the top color, and the top color matched my shirt. Number 2, that is Bottega green, not Celtics green, so leave me alone. And third of all, I mean, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The Pacers knocked out the Knicks, so I guess by byproduct, I should kind of be rooting for the Celtics to knock out the Pacers, so maybe they're on to something. I don't know.
Can I defend you too, Ash? The heart wants what the heart wants. And it's okay to feel a deep love for the Celtics you didn't know you had.
Okay,
we
don't
are
get
here
crazy,
for you.
Bill. Don't get crazy. Don't get crazy.
Going over to the dark side potentially, but yeah, the public has spoken on Ashley's some color green attire from yesterday. All right, today, later in the show, another jam-packed show. We have all NBA teams were announced. We'll discuss who made it, who got snubbed, who got richer. JB Bickerstaff is out of work in Cleveland. I wore my Cleveland is Magical shirt on his behalf. Sorry, womp womp,
Nice,
JB.
nice.
Charles Barkley has thoughts on Caitlin Clark, and I believe Ashley has thoughts on Charles Barkley. And then, of course, we will preview tonight's Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. But first, the Wolves and the Mavericks got underway last night in the Western Conference Finals, and the Mavs took Game 1 in a thriller 108-105. That ends the streak of the Mavs losing Game 1 in the last 5 series coming in. Ashley was very excited about them busting that streak. Mavs are now 8-2. That's both regular season and the playoffs in one-possession games this season. That's the best record in the NBA. Bill, your takeaways from this one?
Look, if you were going to write a script to have Luka Doncic at least begin the process of proving the doubters wrong out there, the people who, myself included, certainly explored it in a column and here on the show, whether or not he has lived up to his excellence and his greatness and his usage rate that we've talked about, this is what that would look like. What a fourth quarter performance, 15 points. I know there's a lot that went into this game, but it's also true that Luka Doncic dominated the fourth quarter, had an outstanding game as a result. Anthony Edwards did not. He made a couple big threes in that fourth quarter, but was pretty quiet and pretty inefficient on the day. And so, John Ash, for me, there's a lot to get into. Kyrie's start, the way he went after Anthony Edwards, who had wanted to guard him, the way that role players stepped up for Dallas, that Dallas defense. But in the end, what was a one-possession game with less than a minute left and finished as a one-possession game, Luka Doncic was the hero of the fourth quarter. Anthony Edwards was not. And I think that'll be a big factor in who wins these games in this series going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a Wolves team that looked a lot more fatigued than they did against the Nuggets. Now, you can go ahead and equate that to they just got out of a very tumultuous series with the Denver Nuggets, and maybe they didn't have much in the tank. But I have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, first of all, Kyrie, he heard Bill's slander about him not showing up in the first half of basketball games and said, okay, so watch this, Bill. Looked absolutely phenomenal. Then Luka went ahead and had his 15 of 33 points in the fourth quarter. Just a monster fourth quarter from him. And I also have to go ahead and shout out the supporting cast of the Dallas Mavericks. You guys know that I've been a huge fan of Derek Lively II this entire postseason. And obviously he's going through so much with recently losing his mother to her battle with cancer. He's been phenomenal when it comes to the rebounding and the rim protection for the Dallas Mavericks, really getting those second and third chance opportunities sometimes. And I think that it was that size in the paint that was also making it very hard for Anthony Edwards to even get inside there and do what he wanted to do. He was just getting beat up and bullied every time he got into the box. So the Mavs did what they needed to do. This was a statement game for one of two reasons. One, Luka and Kyrie, obviously. But John, like you said, they don't do well in game ones, and they don't do well in game ones on the road. They push back against the narrative of all of that, and this was a huge statement game because of it.
Yeah, I thought Luka and Kyrie were really good last night. I mean, as you mentioned, Ashley, Kyrie was great to start, and then Luka closed, and that dynamic duo was really excellent. And you also mentioned that Kyrie sort of welcomed Anthony Edwards, saying that he wanted to guard him. He actually talked about it after the game.
Yeah, no, as a peer, man, I love that. I love it, man. It's nothing better. When Ant was a little bit younger, I'm sure he was watching me, and when he was in high school, I was watching him. So for me, it's more of those exciting matchups that I look forward to too. Right after the game, it was funny because he said it right then and there, and I think the whole world was looking like, okay, you better know what you're talking about, Ant. And I respect that, and that no fear mentality that he has is why I love him as a competitor and why I love him as a person. But when we're on that court, I know he's going to give his all. I'm going to give him my all. And at the end of the game, it's all love. And we're in between those lines. He knows what it is, and I know what it is.
I love that version
I
of
love
Kyrie.
this.
Just
I do
you know
too.
why I do? Because it's so opposite of who he is. He's, at least in this stage in his career, he's more so along the lines of just like, he's kind of quiet and reserved, as and he's just like, I want people to go ahead and be great. He's Mr. Positivity. So I like to see a little bit of the edge, a little bit of the New Jersey come out of Kyrie, where he's like, all right, you said you wanted me, you got me, and you couldn't handle me. So I enjoy Kyrie kind of leaning into his exceptional basketball skills and just who he is as a player. I mean, we talk about it all the time. I think the most skilled basketball player that we have ever seen. And I liked when he gets a little bit into his ego and his bag a little bit. So I enjoy this.
What's really interesting about it, too, is, like, you're right, but he's also doing it in such a likable way. I don't know if the word rehabilitation is fair. Maybe it's an overstatement. I don't want to slander him twice, Ash. You're right. I was a little doubtful. But, John, I mean, this is a guy who had a heel turn, to put it mildly, the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just getting caught up in the basketball. I'll be curious what your take. I like him. Like, just on that response was edgy but gracious. He's praising Ant, but he's also saying, without saying, big mistake, young guy. Like, I'm still Kyrie Irving. He's playing extraordinary basketball. His defense has been great. He fits in with his team. He's not giving lip service to being a leader like he did in Boston. He is helping lead this Mavs team. I just like Kyrie Irving, John. And that is new for me from maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah, he's, he has his moments, right? I mean, like, there are moments when he's doing knucklehead stuff and talking about, various conspiracy theories, and people are like, all right, man, like, I think we're probably good. But then there are other moments like this where he's really charming and engaging. And, I got to interview him a couple of times back when he was in Cleveland, and Channing Frye and some other people did a podcast, and they still do it now, but back then they did it. And Kyrie used to come on the podcast, and I had asked them, like, of your teammates, who's your favorite to interview? And they all said Kyrie. It was like everybody wanted to talk to Kyrie because he can be that. He can be really engaging. And I think, like, him playing with Ant it's a positive for Kyrie.
To that point, though, John, I mean, when all of the media chaos that has surrounded Kyrie during his career has happened, it's really been the media versus Kyrie. But if you speak to anybody who's ever played with him, even on teams that maybe didn't go as far as they thought that they were going to go, or the expectations weren't met, there hasn't been a player who has experienced Kyrie as a teammate who has a bad thing to say about him. It's always been the media, it's always been, the sports talking heads versus Kyrie, but he is very well liked and very well received by his peers, by guys coming into the league, by guys who have retired from the league. Kyrie is just a very likable person. And I'm just glad that he shows that, especially, maybe it's because when you're winning and you're in an environment that's conducive for your happiness, he's kind of been dealing with a lot, going from Brooklyn, and then before that it was Boston, and maybe Dallas is just where he's the happiest, and because he feels happy and he feels safe and he feels secure where he is,
That's a great point.
He's allowed to go ahead and showcase, or he feels comfortable showcasing more of that personality that a lot of the people who have played with him or played against him have experienced.
Yeah, it was Channing Frye and Richard Jefferson was the road tripping podcast that I was mentioning, and how much they liked hanging out with Kyrie. And Kyrie and Luka talked about it last night. Apparently their chemistry continues to develop. They go out on these long dinners together, these like dinner dates. So that's fun. But also our podcast producer, Aaron. Yeah, it's nice. Who's at home watching this right now was wondering if maybe we got a little carried away with our on the other side with our Ant love, because Ant last night didn't shoot well. He was two assists shy of a triple-double, but Kyrie did get the better of him here. So I'm interested to see how he responds after this.
I mean, it's a huge responsibility every step in the playoffs that you advance. And we showed that graphic earlier. He has not been as outstanding the last few games as he started. And the reality is that this is a Timberwolves team. Guys, it's great defensively, is not great, at least over the regular season. offensively. They're very basic. They're very mediocre. They need Anthony Edwards to be better than Luka Doncic in a lot of these games. They need him to be the best player offensively on the floor in a lot of these games. And John, you're right. And Ash, I still think Anthony Edwards can get there. Maybe he's a little tired. Maybe he's a little worn out. Maybe just the pressure feels different. Certainly the teams get better as you advance. And this Dallas defense has been outstanding, as we've talked about a lot. I still think Ant can do the things that he's done that has gotten the Timberwolves here, but he has to, and it's a lot of pressure for a very young guy. It's his responsibility to get this Timberwolves team to the NBA Finals. Can he do it? Maybe, but that's a lot to ask a dude who, as talented as he is, who is this young and this inexperienced in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill. I don't think we've crowned Anthony Edwards too early. I think there's so many things that he's done throughout the course of the season and who he is off the court, his charisma and everything that he kind of embodies that you would want in the face of the league. I don't think that's washed away because he's having a difficult time against this Dallas Mavericks team in one game. And also, we're talking about a Dallas Mavericks team who has one of the best players in the game right now in Luka and one of the most skilled basketball players, if not the most skilled basketball player of all time in Kyrie Irving. It's not a light task to go ahead and compete against them. So I don't think it's about, have we crowned him too early? I think it's about the fact he's 22 years old. He's going against guys who have a lot more experience in the league, also in the playoffs than he does. And that difference is starting to show a little bit more. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's to be expected. I don't think any of us had the Timberwolves winning a finals. I don't think any of us had, or most of us had, the Timberwolves even being in the Western Conference Finals. Them getting this far, this early in kind of their Anthony Edwards era, if you will, alone is a shock to most people. This shouldn't be a shock at all.
I want to see how he adjusts after this game. I also want to see how the Wolves adjust in general. I don't know if you guys, this really caught my eye, but they shot 49 threes last night, which was well over half of their attempts. And I think a lot of that had to do with the Mavs rim protection and wanting to sort of avoid that. So I wonder if they'll make an adjustment there going into game 2 on Friday in Minnesota. But up next, we're going to take a look at the all NBA teams. Those came out yesterday. A lot to discuss there. We'll get into that. You're watching Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill hanging out on CBS Sports Network. You can also find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review. All NBA teams were announced yesterday, gang. About what we'd expect for first and second team. There's a couple of things that I wanted to run through with you guys. The first 4 guys for first team All NBA, no surprise here: Joker, SGA, Luka, and Giannis. The 5th spot was kind of up in the air. For the MVP voting, Jalen Brunson got it. For All NBA, Jason Tatum got it. So, Ash, we'll start with you. Your guy relegated to second team All NBA. How do you feel about that one?
I just think that this is a product of the team he plays for, not necessarily him as an individual, which should be, something that is pushed back against. But I think that this is no different than when we talk about the MVP standings and where certain guys fall in those standings throughout the course of the season. I made the argument that I think that Jason Tatum, is a byproduct a lot of the times of being on a really good team with a lot of really good talent, and maybe sometimes he's kind of heightened because of that. Not taking away from him as an individual, I think he's one of the best players in the league. I think we can all agree with that. But I do think that sometimes when we talk about first team, second team, MVP standings and all of that, I think some guys are given the benefit of the doubt of the team that they play for and not necessarily what their initial or individual contributions are to that team. And if we're talking individual contributions, nobody has done more for their team throughout the course of the regular season and the playoffs than Jalen Brunson did. So if I had to disagree with anybody on this list, it would definitely be Jason Tatum. Again, not a knock to him. I think he's a great player. I think he's such an instrumental part of the Boston Celtics, but I don't think that he is the only instrumental piece of the Boston Celtics, if that makes sense.
Bill, have this matchup with your ballot.
Yeah, we're splitting hairs here, right? And we should. I mean, this is important stuff, and these are honors. And at the bottom of this, obviously, it impacts contracts. I actually had Anthony Davis as my last person on my first team, and a lot of that.
Interesting.
I called a lot of people. I talked to a lot of folks. Ran up by a lot of people. It was a tough one. I would have had Brunson next, and then I would have had Tatum. So I had AD. Look, the defense in a lot of ways, like how he played defensively, was a big part of that. I think value MVP is a little different if you include Defensive Player of the Year. Maybe I'm parsing too much. I had LeBron James second team. He and Kawhi would have been flipped my ballot versus how it came out. And then my last selection, so on the third team, the final spot, the 15th spot, I was going between PG, Booker, and Jaylen Brown. I went with PG. It was Devin Booker. But again, I think that the voters in total, Ash and John, did a really good job. It's basically the exact ballot that I had with a couple changes, and then I would have had Paul George on. But there's a lot of great players in the NBA, and especially now that we're positionless, first year that this has happened, that it's basically you're picking the 15 best players in the NBA, and it is hard when you get down to 15 because there's a lot of good guys opening up in the association right now.
Yeah, I was interested, a little surprised, I think, on the actual voting results because Tatum had a pretty comfortable win over Jalen Brunson for that final spot on the first team. Beat him he had 28 more first place votes, about 60 points total. And then I'm with you, Bill. I would have had LeBron on my second team over Kawhi and AD, but they edged him by a pretty comfortable margin there. And then the last guy in, I would have thought it was Domantas Sabonis last guy in, but he had more votes than Halliburton and Booker. Booker was last guy in on the third team, just barely beating out Paul George and Jaylen Brown. So I thought that was interesting as well. But we should bring up only two teams had two players make all NBA. Right. And those two teams were the Lakers and the Suns combined. They won one playoff game. Ashley's shaking her head. And then both teams fired their head coaches. Bill, this is of interest to you. What do you make of these two teams getting two players?
I guess you don't want two guys on your all NBA teams or you'll lose your job if you're the head coach. I think it just speaks to the fact that there was a time when if you had a big three, right, that was what you were shooting for 10, 11, 12 years ago. Then it kind of became a big two. And now you want two stars. You certainly want two superstars. But you have to have depth. I mean, Ash, you were talking about the guys on Dallas who have contributed and helped. No Kyrie, no Luka, you're not there. But if they don't have the pieces that John has pointed out and you pointed out who came into the trade deadline, they're not here. Either the Denver Nuggets are obviously out. And Jamal Murray's not on here again, right? I mean, Jamal Murray's never been an all-NBA player. He's a great player. But
or an all-star.
Really, or an all-star. Yeah, I mean, he has no any of those accolades. So for me, this just reinforces what GMs have been saying for a while, that with the CBA, the way that it works, the way that it's going to continue to work with the second apron, you're going to have to really be creative. You have to have superstars, but depth is going to matter. Bench play is going to be a lot more important. Having the right guys that fit with what you have. It's not the era now, like the Lakers used to do, just go collect 2 or 3 stars and you're going to win. You have to build a team that's much more comprehensive and much more thoughtful than who are the 2 best guys we can get. And maybe the end of that was the Brooklyn Nets attempts in a couple incarnations to have 3 guys with nobody around them, and it obviously didn't work. And for me, Ash, John, that is the takeaway as I look at this. You got stars, sure. You've got to have a complete basketball team in a way maybe you didn't 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off of that, I feel like also if I'm a Suns fan or I'm a Lakers fan, I'm kind of annoyed by this. Bill mentioned this is a positionless list for the first time. We're basically talking about the best of the best in this league. Over 400 players in this league. We're talking about the best 20, roughly, right? You have 2 on this list and you still get knocked out of the playoffs would be frustrating to me as a player, as a fan, because to Bill's point, why are we not building around 2 of the greats on a list of some of the greatest that are currently existing in the league? It would be frustrating for me. It's a byproduct of trying to cheat the system when it comes to winning a championship in a way that was able and more profitable, if you will, or more, what's the word I'm looking for, actually worked years ago when we were talking about the big 3 in Miami or the big 3 in Boston, or even Brooklyn was like on the cusp and then it started to no longer work. You can't continue that old mindset of like, if we just put a bunch of guys together, we're going to automatically win a championship. You are seeing that change in the league. We're seeing the changing of the guard. So you have to do right when you have not 1 but 2 of the best, and that is build a team around them that can actually compete. So it's great that they have multiple names on it, but it's also kind of like a slap in the face. Like, yeah, multiple names, but we've been chilling in Mexico for 2.5 weeks. So I have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's interesting that those 2 teams got 2 guys each. Just a couple quick notes here before we move on. Steph made his 10th All-NBA selection. That's super rarefied air. This one blew me away. Luka's 25 years old, It's just his 6th season, and he now has more first-team All-NBA honors than KD, Dirk, Dwayne Wade, David Robinson, Moses Malone, and by the way, Steph Curry. Steph Curry has 4 first teams, and now Luka has 5.
Luka just seems older than 25 to me. I don't know why. I know he's not, but he seems like he should be 30. He should be like, I don't know why I feel like he's older than me. It's honestly insane.
I was talking to a GM about this a couple days ago. Do you think, because he does, do you think this is the last time potentially we see LeBron, Steph, or KD on these lists? Because you've also got Victor Wembanyama is going to make this list every year for the rest of his life if he's healthy, right? So he's going to be on there. I think Jaylen Brown, especially if the Celtics win a championship, the way he's playing defense, I think he's the man going forward. I think it's his team in crunch time. We'll see, but he didn't make the list. If Paul George, good luck, John, goes to Philly, right, and they really start to win and hit, I think, you guys tell me, I think this might be the last time we see those 3 guys or any of those 3 guys on this list, which is a seismic sea change for the NBA.
Huge.
Yeah, it really could be changing of the guard for sure. Also, we should note that Halliburton and Ant now stand to make an extra $41 million on their rookie extensions. Congrats to them. And SGA is now eligible next offseason for a 5-year, $295 million Supermax.
Money.
That is very exciting news for him. And Luka. Less exciting news coming up for at least poor JB Bickerstaff, who is now out of a job. We're going to get into that coming up on Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Bill, and Ashley here hanging out. Earlier today, before we hopped on air, JB Bickerstaff got some bad news. We kind of expected this. They were evaluating him after the season, reportedly. JB Bickerstaff was relieved of his coaching duties. He won 99 games with the Cavs over the last 2 years, made the playoffs in both, but he was bounced by the Knicks last season, Ashley's Knicks last season, and then this season lost to the Celtics in round 2. When he had kind of a zombie squad, there were rumors earlier this year that he might be on the hot seat, and then we think his job was saved because they went on that 18-2 run. But then there were reports afterwards that maybe Donovan Mitchell didn't have great confidence in JB. Bill, how much of this is the organization signaling to Donovan Mitchell, we'll do whatever you want to keep you here?
I think it's a lot, John. I talked to some folks, including a league source very familiar with what's going on with the Cavs. And the message was, yes, this was not a great fit between Donovan Mitchell and the former head coach, and they believe in Cleveland that they can keep him. And there's been reporting out there. I think the minute that there started to be leaks that Bickerstaff had arguments with Donovan Mitchell, that the GM, Kobe Altman, remember this report, had gone in and basically Kobe Altman basically went at him. I'm sure it's true. I believe it's true. But those things get leaked usually to a purpose and to spin a narrative and to sort of set the groundwork. So, yes, I think it's absolutely related. They think in Cleveland they have a really good chance to bring Mitchell back, and they believe, probably rightly so, that not having Bickerstaff – by the way, I'm not sure this is fair. I think he did a hell of a job. It's easy to forget what a dumpster fire that organization is, but life isn't fair, so it can be both. It is unfair. I think he did a really, really good job. And it is also – because you pointed out, John, these guys were riddled with injuries at the end of that series, and they still took a game off Boston. But also, Ash, life isn't fair. Stars get what they want, and if you're Cleveland, you have to do everything in your power to keep Donovan Mitchell, and if that even remotely includes moving on from the head coach, you move on from the head coach.
Ash, what Bill is saying about it not being necessarily fair, this is what I'm wondering what you think about this, because they tanked their way into the 4 seed. They had a shot to be the 2 or the 3. They didn't want any part of it. They decided they'd rather take on a young Orlando Magic team so that they could at least win a round and signal to Donovan Mitchell, hey, look at this, we won a round. Doesn't it look like, I mean, it's not surprising here, but it feels to me that they're scapegoating JB Bickerstaff here.
You see what happens when you duck the smoke? You see what happens? Sometimes it backfires on you. That's why you just got to run up the chimney and let the chips fall where they may. But look, we're talking about Bickerstaff led the Cavs to 2 conference semifinals and won 99 regular season games in the past 2 years. To Bill's point, I think a lot of it does have to do with Donovan Mitchell. But we've seen this before. The coach usually is the scapegoat, whether that's fair or not. You saw it with Darvin Ham. Nobody could have made that Lakers team win a championship. Darvin Ham certainly couldn't do it. Does that mean he's a bad coach? I don't know. Does that mean he was the right coach for the job? Probably not. But is that a reflection on him or more of the failures of the front office? I think that the front office and the people who put these teams together, the GMs, will always go ahead and point the finger at the head coach until they look in the mirror and say, we probably didn't do what we needed to do to make this team a championship contender. To your point, Donovan Mitchell did not play those last 2 games in that series against the Celtics. Jared Allen missed the entire playoffs, or at least the entirety of that specific season, which was a huge loss for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So it's not fair because there's only so much you can control with what you have as a head coach. But I do also think that once you lose the locker room, and that locker room has a star of the name Donovan Mitchell, or any superstar for that matter, and once the respect and the trust to take you guys as a team to the promised land is gone, I think it's very hard to kind of rectify that relationship and redevelop the trust that this is the guy for the job. And I think it reached that point in Cleveland. So it's not fair, but it's also just the lay of the land when we talk about the NBA.
As Bill said, the Cavs believe that they are, quote, according to reports, positioning to extend Donovan Mitchell. He's eligible for a 4-year, $208 million deal. If that happens, more shoes are probably going to drop here. There are other reports that if Donovan Mitchell stays, that Darius Garland, who's represented by Rich Paul, will reportedly want to have a conversation about Darius Garland being moved on, which, by the way, sometimes there are no-win trades. That could potentially be a win-win because quite clearly Darius Garland's development was arrested by the presence of Donovan Mitchell. And our colleague Sam Quinn had brought this up and said, hey, maybe like a good landing spot would be put him next to Wemby in San Antonio, but somewhere else for Darius Garland to just because 2 years ago, he looked really good. He looked like he was a shooting star, like Ashley, by the way, ending up on Awful Announcing's Rising Stars. He was the Ashley of the NBA. Congratulations, Ashley.
Thank you.
And now all of a sudden he's slowing down a little bit. He's not as good as Ashley. But so that would be nice to see Darius Garland go someplace.
Yeah. He's a fading star, not a rising star.
Fading star, yeah.
I am curious, though, they're putting a lot of emphasis on the possibility that Donovan Mitchell resigns or extends, rather. And nobody really knows. I know the Cavs have their, blinders on and they're focused on that. But they also thought LeBron was staying in Cleveland, and he ended up going to LA. So you really can't go ahead and think that something is 100% and start moving things around for a player that may or may not be there. So I'm curious as to if it's a Donovan Mitchell Bickerstaff thing or if it's a team thing, because if it's just a Donovan Mitchell thing, let's play devil's advocate and say Donovan leaves and he decides, you know what, Cleveland is not for me. I don't want to be here anymore. It's been real, but I want to go someplace else. But the rest of the team enjoyed him as a head coach and didn't have any issues. You then just got rid of a coach that had a good relationship with your players for a player that's no longer even there. So I wonder if they're maybe putting the carriage before the horse in this situation.
Here's another thing I think it's worth thinking about. Again, this is something somebody else told me around the NBA, and it's interesting. I don't know if it's true, but it strikes me as viable. If you're Kobe Altman and you work for an owner in Dan Gilbert who is hard to manage up with, and that's the polite way of saying maybe not the world's best owner. And another report that came out recently that I think is significant is Dan Gilbert is telling people he's going to get more involved. He wants to get more involved in offseason decision making. That's him reaching into the front office, which is something he always does. And what do GMs do when life is unfair for them from their owners? They look to make it unfair for somebody else, and you blame somebody else. So there's some speculation in the NBA among all these things, which I think are true, Ash, absolutely, that also Kobe Altman might be under some fire. Remember, and I like Kobe, and I think he's a good GM. I believe it was entering this past year where he got a DUI, and they sort of he was on probation for a little bit, or at least accusations of a DUI. There are some pressures always there because Dan Gilbert is not easy to work for. So some of this might also be Kobe Altman making sure if his owner is irrationally put out with a second-round exit, that he's framing it as it's not my fault, it is somebody else's fault, because that's also what happens in the NBA. It's unfortunately as much chess and politics as it is basketball when you have owners like Dan Gilbert you have to work for.
Going to be a very interesting offseason in Cleveland this summer. They got a lot of moving pieces that they got to figure out. They also have to figure out, they got to pick one between Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I think they should place their bet on Evan Mobley and move on for Jared Allen, but that doesn't work either. So we'll see what happens in Cleveland. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then everybody has something to say about Caitlin Clark. Charles Barkley is the latest. We'll discuss that on Beyond the Arc. Ashley's getting ready for this right here on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we do all kinds of fun stuff on our YouTube page. You can vote on Ashley's Celtics-related attire, and you can also just check out our other videos. You can find our page at Beyond the Arc CBS. Subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. I'm sure that this next part will end up on our YouTube page as well. So yesterday we talked about LeBron discussing Caitlin Clark and Bronny and the hate and sort of like the vitriol and the commentary that they have to deal with online. So yesterday, before Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, as part of the Inside the NBA on TNT pregame show, Charles Barkley, never one to lack in opinions, decided to weigh in on this particular topic. Here's Charles on Caitlin.
You women out there, y'all petty, man. Hey, LeBron, you're 100% right on these girls hating on Caitlin Clark. Y'all petty, girls. I expect men to be petty because we're the most insecure group in the world.
Yeah, you are.
Y'all should be thanking that girl for getting y'all private charters, all the money and visibility she bringing to the WNBA. Don't be petty like dudes. Listen, what she's accomplished, give her flowers. Stop being petty, all you women out there. She got y'all ass charters. She bringing all y'all this money to the table, but y'all being petty like dudes. LeBron, you are 100% right. Y'all girls, stop being petty. Caitlin Clark, thank you for bringing all that money and shine to the WNBA.
Well, they're gonna hate you even more now.
Hey, they can't do anything to me.
They're gonna hate you though.
Hey, they can hate on me, but that mailman better be in my damn house the 1st and the 15th for another year.
Ashley?
So I love Charles Barkley. Let me just go ahead and say this. So this is not coming from a place of malice, but it was an extremely ignorant thing to say, and I will tell you why. First of all, the WNBA has been increasing in revenue way before Caitlin Clark was even thought of. Also, there have been a lot of women in this industry and in the WNBA specifically who have been fighting and advocating for changes in the league way before Caitlin Clark even stepped foot in it. But what also it was really more insulting as a woman is that he was only speaking towards women and said, don't be petty like the men, be better, as if there's justifying men being petty and that's okay. My issue is this. Yes, jealousy is a natural reaction and it's a natural emotion and it exists whether people want to own up to it or not. And are there people across both male and female who may have animosity towards Caitlin Clark for the attention and the awareness and the pedestal that she has been put on? Sure. But to go ahead and generalize women as a whole and say that you women, as if the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions, and these are perceived thoughts, feelings, and emotions, because he doesn't know who feels jealousy towards Caitlin Clark and who doesn't. It's a perceived feeling. So unless you're going to go ahead and call the people out specifically, to lump all women together just further perpetuates this narrative that women are unable to be happy for other women. And as a woman, I find that insulting because one thing I've always used my platform for is to go ahead and uplift other women and to celebrate other women because I'm not going to be in this position forever. None of us will be. And it's our responsibility to go ahead and make sure that the generation after us and the generation after that has it a little bit easier than we had. So by perpetuating this narrative that there's hate on Caitlin Clark or people are jealous of Caitlin Clark and all of these things that, again, are perceived because it hasn't been proven as a fact, again, just pushes a narrative that I think is very, very dangerous when it comes to the advancement of women. And Chuck, again, I love you, but it's definitely something I did not appreciate, and it was very, very irresponsible and also not factual. Again, chartered flights, the revenue of the WNBA, all of that has been in the works for a very long time. It is Caitlin's star power that may have expedited it, but to go ahead and discredit the work that has been done before she even stepped foot in this league is insulting, and also it's irresponsible.
Well said.
Well,
Bill?
Bravo. Yeah. I mean, co-sign, everything Ash said, and I'll just add that this isn't going to make Caitlin Clark's life easier for the small number of people at WA who maybe are a little jealous because, as Ashley said, labeling a bunch of folks who are competing for their livelihoods as petty simply because they have to compete against Caitlin Clark is unfair, and it also does not make Caitlin Clark's life any easier.
Also, Charles, not surprisingly, kind of screwed up what LeBron actually said. LeBron said that there were men and women who give heat to Caitlin and Bronny, and then Charles twisted into only women were coming for Caitlin Clark, which is not what LeBron said at all. And also, just as a general rule of thumb, I think if you're going to start out your rant about this whole thing with, hey, women, that's probably a bad idea.
Yeah, take a pause.
As soon as he started, I was like, oh no.
And we're also talking about some of the best competitors in the world, right? And again, I say that jealousy is a normal emotion because it is. And anyone who's ever said that they've never been jealous about something or someone is a liar. And when you're an ultimate competitor and when you are out there trying to be the best and be the best year in and year out, yes, you may ruffle some feathers and you may feel a type of way about the new kid on the block getting all the attention when you've been grinding and you've been hustling. And there's a difference between people who use that as motivation to get them to where they want to be or better than the person that they're looking at. And then there are people who let that consume them and allow it to formulate in feelings of hate and things like that. There are two different ways to deal with jealousy. But again, he's pushing a narrative that doesn't exist. There's been two instances of women speaking on Caitlin Clark in a not so nice light. There was Cheryl Swoops, who had concerns about whether or not Caitlin Clark was going to come into the WNBA and be successful. And then she walked her comments back and she said, hey, I was wrong. Maybe she'll have a better transition than a lot of other women do. And then Diana Taurasi, who, if you know DT, that's what she does. She hates everybody until you prove to her why she shouldn't. And we're also talking about a rookie. And you guys know, in the NBA, it is no different. When you come into the NBA as a rookie, there is a hazing process. It's not going to be easy for you. Guys are going to get a little bit rough with you on the court. They're going to push you around, especially if you have the lights and the bright light around you, like a Wemby did when he came into the draft. They make it a little harder for you. It's like, welcome to the big boys league. It's no different than what women do in the WNBA, and it's insulting to think or to perpetuate a narrative that which we celebrate men for doing because they've been doing it forever equals hate. And men, it's just them being petty, but that's okay. Men can be petty. You women better tighten up and stuff. It's like, come on now. If you're going to call people out, call the men out too. They're petty. Why is only the women got to go ahead and change their emotions and things like that? I don't like that. I'm an equal opportunity hater. If I'm going to hate somebody, it's going to be across the board. That's how I feel.
Chuck, that's why Ash is a rising star. I mean, like for Alpha now. Amen. Well said. Yes. Let's go.
Well said. Not surprising that Charles Barkley made an absolute hash out of that, but we did get, as a result, Ashley's response to it. So it worked out in the end. We're going to take out a quick break, and then on the other side, we got to discuss Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Celtics and the Pacers. That's going to be tonight. We'll get into that on the other side right here on Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc, wrapping up today's edition on a Thursday. We got Celtics and Pacers Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals tonight. Celtics are up 1-0 in that series, gang, as you know, because they stole a game. We had talked previously about can the Pacers steal a game. The Celtics stole Game 1. They won Game 1 in overtime. The Pacers had 21 turnovers. Celtics are favored again tonight by 9 points, but what a missed opportunity for the Pacers. Do we think, Bill, we were talking about this in the break, do we think that the Pacers can get one and make it a series? Because they almost did, and we were all excited about it. Now it feels like the Celtics are going to march through this thing without much trouble.
I want it so badly. I scared the crap out of my 11-year-old because when Jaylen Brown hit that shot, he was sitting next to me, and I screamed a swear word so loud. I didn't realize how badly I wanted the Pacers to win until Brown hit that shot in the corner to send it to OT because I want a really good series. And, John, I think no. I think maybe they just broke the Pacers. And we'll see. They need – because here's what I'm worried about with the Pacers. There's a lot of factors. But Tyrese Halliburton, I think Ash made such a great point yesterday or the day before that Halliburton only talks smack. And this is true, by the way, when things are going well. Well, things just went – and I think –
Tell that to the people on Instagram, Bill, okay? Tell that to those people.
Those people that are out there that are being mean are idiots. And I'm not on Instagram because I'm not cool enough, but the Stupid X thing, sports writer, there you go. Come for me. Those people are dumb, Ash. I thought it was a great point. And the thing about fake tough guys is that often they're fake tough guys because they're not here for that life. And when they actually get punched in the face or something bad happens or there's some humiliation, they fold. And we have seen Tyrese Halliburton throughout these playoffs be extraordinary sometimes and then just disappear and sort of vanish and be invisible. And he was, I think 0 for 2 in the fourth quarter of that game one. I think he was 1 of 3. Yeah, 1 of 3, I think, is what it was in overtime. He wasn't particularly impressive. And I'm worried that he, based on what we've seen from him and is only talking smack when it's going well, is going to not be assertive enough because that backcourt is outstanding. The guys that are going to be on him, Drew Holiday, Derek White, whoever it is, they're going to make life miserable for him, and he's got to overcome that. He's got to be great. He's got to put his team on his back. I think he has to be the guy, especially offensively, create some shots, hit some threes. So hope I'm wrong. The Pacers are clearly good enough to compete. We saw that, especially with no Porzingis. And there was a free throw discrepancy that maybe can be addressed however you do that. But I think maybe the Pacers got broken. I think maybe Halliburton's going to hide. And Ash, if they lose this game after like 20 or any amount, after giving away game one, I think it's 4, it's 5, and we missed out on a chance for maybe a surprisingly compelling series.
So I'm on the side of I think that their best opportunity to steal the game in Boston was in game one. I mean, we're talking about they had 22 turnovers, which is absolutely insane. I think Naismith and Miles Turner combined for 9. Tyrese Halliburton had two costly ones. You need to go ahead and hold on to that ball. Ball security is everything when you're playing a team like the Boston Celtics for 2 reasons. 1, they don't need your help with possessions and being able to score in those possessions. But 2, although Boston has really good individual and team defenders, they're not a team that forces a lot of turnovers. So all you did was give them more opportunities to go ahead and make the gap larger in terms of scoring. For me, I don't see how they recreate that magic. Now, I will say this. We've talked about this with Boston time and time again, and Jason Tatum spoke about this in his post game. They need to go ahead and play with urgency. The Boston Celtics have a very strong habit of taking their foot off the gas and being a little lax and saying, we're going to win this series anyway, so it's all good. They can't play like that because we do know that the Pacers are 6-0 on the road, and although the Celtics have a good road record, the Pacers are undefeated at home. So you need the Boston Celtics to go and play a lot more intense than we saw in that first game where they made ahead and only came out of it because the Pacers messed up.
I look at it and go, yeah, the turnovers killed them, no doubt about it. But also, they played their game. The Pacers played their game. I mean, they shot the ball really well, again, for a second straight game. They're in I believe it was like 56% from the floor or something like around there, right? After shooting 67%, a record 67% in Game 7 against the Knicks. And they had another game with more than 30 assists. That was their 10th game of this postseason where they done it. So, like, their game plan was executed well. They just coughed it up at the end of regulation and then in overtime where Bill mentioned, Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday playing really excellent defense and forcing 2 really critical turnovers, one against Pascal Siakam and then obviously the one against Tyrese Halliburton. And like, absent those 2 mistakes, if something else goes their way, look, Rick Carlisle has 2 hands. With 10 seconds left, if he did this with his hands, they win that game.
I mean,
that's all you got to do. And we're
or if
talking about the Pacers being up 1-0.
They just would have fouled like normal people would have, but.
Or Halliburton doesn't dribble the ball off his knee. Yeah, John's right. You're right, Ash. They gave the game away 3 or 4 times. 3 or 4 times. They just gave it away.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I was really excited about the Pacers stealing one.
It's a bummer.
Maybe they can get one tonight, or if not, as Ashley mentioned, they're 6-0 at home, so perhaps they can climb back into the series once it goes to Indiana for games 3 and 4. But we're going to leave it there for now. We're going to be back tomorrow in podcast form, and we'll be back on CBS Sports Network at some point next week. We'll let you know on the pod, and then you'll come and join us here on CBS Sports Network. But for now, for today, for Ashley Nicole Moss, the rising star from Awful Announcing, congratulations to Ashley, and for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I am John Gonzalez. Be sure to check us out on Beyond the Arc, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you, or you'll hear us tomorrow.